Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frolo podcast. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Jillian Turecki, a certified relationship coach, writer, teacher, podcast host, and now author. For 20 years, Jillian has taught others how to transform their relationships with themselves. And Jillian, to start off, I just want to share, as I just did before we started recording, that I am an absolute super fan and I'm super grateful for the work that you're doing. And I just really feel that you have massively helped me become more self-aware, more courageous in having uncomfortable, honest conversations and being more aware of how to when to lean in, when to set boundaries. And yeah, it's amazing work that you're doing. And I wish the whole world was in the Jillian Turecki, education system, because dating would be an easier landscape if everyone was partaking. But first of all, I would just love to hear about you and how you ended up doing this work, because you are an absolute guru when it comes to dating and relationships, and so wise and so straight talking. And I'd love to know, how did you, come to accumulate all of this knowledge, and what is your story?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for that really generous and beautiful introduction. And I'm just so truly, it like very much touches my heart to know that I've been able to help you in any way. So thank you.
Thank you.
So it all started with sort of my pursuit of self-discovery and trying to understand like the meaning behind life. And that really started with my yoga practice. I've been an avid yoga practitioner for, 25 years now. And so I started teaching yoga. And I taught yoga in classes, but I also worked with a lot of people dealing with physical pain, emotional pain, relationship pain. And I would help them sort of navigate those difficult waters through the practice of yoga. And so I have been helping people fortify their relationship with themselves and their relationship with their nervous systems and also their relationship with others through this for many, many years. I did it for almost 20 years. And but when I got married, when did I get married? 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that. And when I got married, I was in this we're not married anymore. We got divorced, but we got divorced almost 11 years ago. So I was in this very interesting place in my life where I wanted to get married and have kids and like go that route. And I also was like getting bored with teaching yoga, and I wanted more, but I didn't know what that was. But I wasn't taught. I mean, I was raised by immigrant parents. So I was taught, you have your job. Like it was a mixed message of find a man who can like support you, and you better also have a job. It was like, well, which one is it? But one thing that I wasn't taught, which this is only just because I don't blame my parents for this. It's just, it is what it is. And part of it is generational. Wasn't really exactly taught how to pursue, or that I should pursue my dreams. But fortunately, I had a mother who was very open to me pursuing what it is that I really wanted to pursue. And so I was like, I'm going to teach yoga, but I didn't know, am I going to be someone's wife and someone's mother? Or am I going to be like, have a career? I just never really knew what I was going to do. And I ended up getting married, and it was a very difficult marriage. There were The relationship before we got married was about 90% amazing, but the 10% that was problematic was extremely problematic. They're the kind of red flags that one must never ignore. So that when we got married, that 10% actually became the 90%. And it was a very painful time. And it was, I thought I went into that relationship mature, knowing who I am, knowing what I want, able to create a relationship with someone that would last. But I had so little skills, I later realized. And he had problems. He brought to the relationship things that I struggled with my father. And we didn't have the tools, and I certainly didn't have the tools. So when that relationship ended, it ended very abruptly. He broke up with me over a text when my mom was dying, and I had a miscarriage that morning. Yeah, so it's a crazy story, and I can tell that story now. I have no emotional. There's no emotional charge behind my words anymore. I've processed that. So when I say that, I know it's a shock to others, but it's important. It's actually really important that I know that I've healed from that because I can tell the story without emotional charge. I have processed it so much. And if it weren't for that story, I guarantee you with everything that I have, that you and I would not be sitting here today talking. So when that ended and I thought I was going to die, literally, I had to figure out fast how to survive. And I also became obsessed with this question, which is, what the hell does it take to make a relationship work? And maybe part of the quote unquote problem is me. Clearly there's something that I'm not doing right here. And I was very, very confused. And so I became obsessed with this. And then I found incredible teachers, incredible mentors. And I am a teacher. That's what I think of myself as, first and foremost. And I thought, I have to teach this, because when he and I went to couples therapy, it was terrible. Now, I'm not making a statement that all couples therapy is bad, but the therapy that we had was terrible. And I thought there has to be a better way. And I discovered that there is a better way. And that's when I went into my journey into couples counseling. But then I really wanted to work with singles, and singles were flocking to me, and people who were heartbroken and all of that. So I really expanded my practice. But that's how it all began.
It's amazing, isn't it? How your pain can turn into your power and your purpose. It's incredible.
I think that's what we have to do. Yeah, I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah, that was part of my story with how I created Frolo. It was from that same place, just despair. And actually it's, now I look back and see what an amazing gift that whole, period of my life was.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I mean, being broken up by text, by your husband is certainly not ideal. But I have a sneaking suspicion that some of our single parents listening to this podcast episode might have, similar stories, unfortunately. So I would love to know, when a relationship is going through a difficult time, how do you know that, how do you figure out whether you should keep on going or walk away? How do you determine?
Yeah. So this is definitely the $1 million question. I think that as long as there's no physical violence or verbal violence, and as long as there's not that, and as long as, let me backtrack a little bit. Relationships end for many different reasons. And I don't believe in staying in a relationship when you're miserable. However, I do believe that when you love someone and you've invested a lot in them and there's no abuse, it is worthwhile to ask yourself, well, why am I miserable? And could it be that I'm making them miserable too? And if that's the case, if the answer is yes, then wouldn't it behoove you to try to figure out how to not make the other person miserable? And if they are making you miserable, you want to know why, and maybe learn how to communicate better. You have to know what each other's needs are. See, the amount of people who are married or in a serious committed relationship, excuse me, and let's say they're living together, the amount of people who are strangers to each other, they're living under the same roof and they don't know each other's dreams and goals. They don't know what each other needs in order to feel important to each other, in order to feel loved by each other. They don't know each other's deepest fears. They don't have any conversations about how their childhood impacts their adulthood. And so I think that you don't leave a relationship, except for certain instances, like I mentioned, until you have those conversations and you figure out how much your ego has gotten in the way of connection. And ultimately, we have to be motivated to do that kind of work with someone and on ourselves in order to fix whatever's broken in the relationship. And the only thing that's really going to motivate you is if you love the person. If you don't love the person, if you don't respect them, if you don't trust them, then, and you don't want to have sex with them, then it's over. Then it's over. But if you love them, but you're struggling to feel enough for them, you love them, but you feel really frustrated and unseen and unheard, you love them, but you just don't know how to make it better, read my book. go get a really great couples therapist and start doing the work, so that if you decide to call it and to walk away, at least you can say, you know what, I stepped up. For me, I did that first and foremost for me, because I know that if I'm just to walk away without actually really asking these difficult questions of myself and of the other, I'm just going to get into a relationship with someone else, and a lot of the same things are just going to happen again.
Yes, that resonates. It's about breaking the cycle.
It is about breaking the cycle, and I wish it was an easier question to answer, but every relationship has its own story and nuance. So I have to answer that question as generally as I possibly can to inspire as many people as possible to think differently about their circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you covered it really well. And then thinking about, ending a relationship, how long do you think people should wait before thinking about dating again? Or how do you know you're in the right place to open up?
Again, this is nuance. I think that if you were with someone, it really just depends on the circumstance, how long you were with that person. I think it also depends on how difficult that relationship was. Like if it was a relationship where it's just like you grew apart. I was speaking to someone recently. She's 35. She was with her husband since high school. And they just recently divorced because, you kind of change a whole hell of a lot between 16, and 35. You change a lot more between 16 and 35 than you do between 35 and 55, And it was the relationship had expired. They grew into two different people. There was no point for her to spend too much time. She was ready to date. She's like, I want to get back out there. And she definitely processed. My request is process, have some understanding of what went wrong, have an understanding of how they messed up, have an understanding of how you messed up, have an understanding of what just happened. But there's no real time frame. Some people, here's the thing. Statistically, and I wish that I could give you the exact stat, and I can't, but you can Google it because it is a statistic. Women take on average like 7 years or something or longer to get back in the saddle again, and men do it really quickly. And the thing is that a lot of men, I say, take some time to feel your feelings and grieve and to really process. And a lot of women, I'm trying to push them to love again. So I think that it really just depends on, have you taken time to just kind of process your feelings about it? And do you have some sort of perspective on what happened so that you don't hate all men, even though you want to have sex with them, or hate all women, even though you want to have sex with them. And, and you really have to dig deep. Like, do I have some belief here about I'm afraid of men or I'm afraid of women? And also make sure that you understand what your pattern is and what you would like to do differently the next time, and have that sort of intention. Yeah.
Oh, there's just so much self-awareness needed, isn't there, for this?
There is so much self-awareness. The more self-aware a person is, the easier time they're going to have in relationships.
And that
It's not a
leads me on.
guarantee.
Yes,
Right.
but
Right.
at least if we're thinking about, not just projecting every uncomfortable feeling that we have onto someone else and
You
thinking,
got
well,
it.
this could be from when I was 5 years old and this happened, or
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
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 But that leads me on nicely to the next question. So then when someone is ready for dating, and say in the early stages of dating, how do you navigate the balance between kind of opening up and trusting and putting your best foot forward and being cautious? And
well, let's just say, so I'm going to get really, really particular and then sort of expand out. Let's say you have had a history of being abused, maybe narcissistic abuse, maybe physical abuse. You have a history of really being an abused person in a relationship. You have to be very cautious. Very cautious. And this is what I mean by caution. Be friends with the person first. Don't sleep with them until you are 100% that you feel safe with this person and you know their character. Have everyone who's important in your life meet them. Get the approval of the really key important people. Make sure you know their key people in their life. And slowly but surely build a connection with that person. Don't close your heart, but make it platonic at first. And for a while, again, I'm speaking, this is very niche. So I'm going to, again, start niche and expand out. Let's just say you weren't abused, because we have to be very mindful of the fact that someone can hurt your feelings. And they can even betray you in some way, maybe cheat on you. That doesn't necessarily mean you were like abused. But let's just say you do have a history of having a lot of betrayal. So it all depends on your history. And so it really does behoove a person to go slowly. That said, if you have all your walls up, the only person you're going to attract is the person who sees breaking down your walls as a challenge, and they don't really love themselves enough to be with someone who's receptive to them. And you might attract someone who wants to break down your walls, but eventually he or she will get bored. So vulnerability is very, very important. But there are ways to be vulnerable without, let's say you feel extremely vulnerable after sleeping with someone. So you can learn how to be vulnerable with someone without going to the sex part just yet, right? So it's about letting people in and then a little bit, and then seeing if you feel comfortable with them. And if you do, open it up a little bit more and a little bit more. There's no version of love that does not come with it the risk of a broken heart. So you have to trust yourself that if it doesn't work out, you will be fine. You're a lot stronger than you think. But it is a tragedy to not open up your heart again. But you can do it with some certain things in place to make sure that you don't fall back into a pattern that's very destructive.
Yes, I love that answer. That makes complete sense.
Oh, good.
And then a final question from me before we go on to a couple of questions that single parents in our community have sent in. So in terms of attachment theory, which everyone seems to be becoming an expert in at the
Yes.
moment.
Yes, it's maddening, actually.
Is it possible to swing between to identify
Yes.
with two different attachment styles? So to feel anxious if someone's avoidant and
Yes.
the opposite way around?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not fixed. It's completely contextual. It depends who you're relating to. It depends what else is going on in your life. If your work life is falling apart, or you feel very lost in sort of like your purpose, if you don't have strong community, if your other areas of life other than a romantic relationship is particularly unstable, you're going to cling more in a romantic relationship, likely. Um, if you're feeling insecure, you might even avoid more with someone if you're not that into them, or they're clinging to you, or they don't give you any breathing room in the relationship. So it's absolutely not fixed. It's fluid. It can change. It changes when we strengthen our relationship to ourselves. It strengthens when we learn how to sit with our uncomfortable emotions and learn how to communicate. It shifts when we get sick and tired of our sabotaging behavior. It shifts depending on who we're in a relationship with. So yeah, absolutely. It's very, very contextual.
Yeah, I definitely have experienced that myself in different scenarios. It's so interesting when that self-awareness is more present to really notice that actually.
Yeah. And something that I will add is that just the very nature of romantic relationships, it's a dance, right? And we're always trying to figure out how much togetherness and how much autonomy we should have. And there's always that dance, and there's always going to be, oh, let me come a little bit closer. Okay, let me pull away a little bit. Like, I want the togetherness, but no, I need to also reclaim my autonomy. So that's always going to exist. When it becomes unhealthy is when we don't have the awareness of that, and we are digging our heels into the ground saying, well, I want my autonomy, so I'm just not going to communicate with you. I'm going to shut down. It's like, that's when it gets very unhealthy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so going on to our first question from a single dad in the Frolo community called Alex. So Alex has said this. This year, I experienced my most traumatic heartbreak ever. My first serious relationship post serious divorce, 9 years of marriage. Yes, I agree these breakups can be way more traumatic than a divorce, as you discussed in one of your shows, Jillian. This summer, a 2.5 year on and off relationship I was in ended. I was experiencing perpetual hurt due to the incongruence and low character of my ex. Plans cancelled, no shows to important events, not respecting my boundaries and hiding information. The hurt and pain was too much for me to bear, so our relationship ended. I have truly accepted it is over. There are two sides to every story for sure, and after 2 years in this relationship, I began to experience strong feelings. I was being manipulated, breadcrumbed, being misled, a realization, you could say. I feel mugged off, to put it bluntly. If I had known certain things, I like to think I would have made different decisions and could have avoided what I am going through. The hurt and pain has affected my parenting ability. I need to be strong for my 11-year-old and 6-year-old. So much of my anger is directed at myself for thinking I could change the person I was in a relationship with. I look back and think I was stupid for hanging in there and should have ended it at the first warning signs. While I navigate life as a co-parent of 2 children, so he has 2 questions. How do I learn to forgive myself when I have strong feelings of self-loathing and anger? And 2, what are your top tips on building a positive life after a catastrophic heartbreak?
Okay. So the first piece of advice that I would give Alex is you transform self-loathing into forgiveness by getting very curious about what was going on for you in this relationship, because he needs to learn how to love himself more, because he was in a relationship with I don't know if it was a woman or a man, but he was in a relationship with someone who did not respect him and did not admire him and probably was not that attracted to him, because people don't act that way unless if they respect you and they admire you. And I know particularly women in particular do not, when they really treat their man poorly, it's because they don't respect them. It's because they can, and they're constantly testing him to see if he will stand up to her. And so I think that oftentimes when I see men get into these pickles, they are so attracted to the woman and they get a little obsessive, and then and they're sort of seeing her through the lens of their 14-year-old self. Women do this too. And he didn't realize that, like, in order to actually make a relationship work, you need to be respected and admired by the person who you're with. And so you want to get curious about, where have you lost before this relationship? Where do you struggle to respect yourself? Where do you struggle to admire yourself? I would ask him, how's work? How's purpose? How is that area of your life going? And so you got to get very, very curious, because there's so much to learn from this. So much to learn from this. And what you want to teach your children is not how to be perfect and not make mistakes. You want to teach your children resilience, how to bounce back from mistakes, how to get curious about themselves. So that's what you have to do, is teach your kids how to embrace failure. And the way that we embrace failure is seeing that every failure has a lesson and an opportunity to teach us something. So that's what he has to do. The second question, can you remind me what it is?
Yes. The second question was,
how do you build a life?
Yes, building a positive life after a catastrophic heartbreak.
I think I kind of answered that. I think that you focus on the areas of your life that you were ignoring while you were in that relationship, because most breakups that are catastrophic follow a relationship that was very difficult in some way or toxic in some way. So if you were on and off and it was toxic and you were manipulated and you were trying so hard to change this person, chances are you were ignoring yourself, you were ignoring your purpose, you were ignoring maybe some even part of your parenting. I don't know. So now's the time to reclaim yourself as a man, to reclaim yourself as a human being. What is going to light you up in life? Who do you want to contribute to? What do you want the next 10 years of your life, if someone were to describe it and give a mission statement to describe the next 10, 20 years of your life, what would it be? And think about the principles that you want to teach your children and embody that through this overcoming of this breakup, and that he will be okay.
Thank you. Amazing. And then the next question is from another Frolo dad called Rob. And so Rob says this: after a prolonged divorce process, you finally find yourself on your own, but you feel so completely damaged by what you've just gone through that you don't think it's possible for you to ever be in a relationship again, or that no one in their right mind would ever consider getting into a relationship with you. Your confidence is on the floor. So the easiest thing to do is not to even try to meet someone and tell yourself that you are going to spend the rest of your life alone, when deep down you desperately want to meet someone and fall in love with someone who feels the exact same way about you, but you are scared of risking opening up the door to more pain and hurt. What should you do?
Go to the gym every single day, number one. Number two, work with a very skilled therapist or coach who can help you challenge the story that you have about your marriage and how it ended and why you feel so broken. Because you do need to have better self-esteem before you get out dating again. If you feel so broken and so unlovable, that needs to be addressed. You're not ready to date until you can address that. And the way that you address that is really is reframing the story. And you need to work with someone. I would maybe join even a men's group. Maybe if you're lacking community and you're lacking good friends, do that. If sports is your thing, do sports. If meditate, whatever your thing is, join that thing. You need community. You need to get out of your head. So you need to, in community, be also giving back. I don't know, volunteer somewhere. So these are the things, because he's too, and I understand, I just want to give him a hug. So I've got nothing but compassion, but he's too focused on self right now. And the way that he's going to build himself back up again is working on his body every single day, changing his physiology, feeling stronger in his body, giving back, finding community, and working with someone to really help, or read books. You can read my book. There's other books. I recommend books by Tony Robbins or David Goggins, to read books about really changing your mindset around story and whatnot. And if there's certain things that are really need to be addressed, if you're an addict, you need to get sober. If you are this, you need to do that. So now it's the time to just take action. And to really, he needs to be motivated every day, because right now he's in learned helplessness. And by that, and I've been there, by that I mean he thinks that this is permanent, this is not going to go away, everything's terrible. In that state, you can't find love. In that state, you're not going to even find the right love. In that state, you're not going to be able to you're not going to access the resources you need to get out of the hole that you feel that you are in. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. More wisdom from you, Jillian. And speaking of which, your book, It Begins With You, which I have pre-ordered and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I am so excited. Can you tell us a little bit about what the book is about and how it can help people?
Yeah. So it's called It Begins With You, the 9 Hard Truths About Love That Will Change Your Life. And that's because regardless of what your relationship status is, if you want, like all these people who called in and other people, it's like, if you want to change your love life, it really does begin with you. And this book offers very, very concrete, practical steps to transform your love life. And you can take it into any area of your life to learn how to choose yourself. And it's there's these 9 truths that I came up with. These are the 9 truths that I wanted to kind of leave behind in the world. If I had to think of only, a certain amount of truths, I spent years coming up with these 9 truths, changing them, reorganizing them, reordering them. So yeah. And
well,
that's it. I'm like, that's it.
It's super exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I really cannot wait to get my hands on it and to devour it. And
Thank you.
finally, Jillian, just given that, most of our listeners will obviously be single parents, what would your piece of advice be to somebody who's a single parent, who's probably, maybe been through a really difficult separation or divorce, or maybe even lost their partner, um, and they haven't navigated the world of dating yet. They're also now the first time venturing into dating as a parent, so it's a new, very different territory, and they're feeling scared, cautious, nervous, all of the
Yeah.
things. How can they put their best foot forward in giving themselves the best chance at, enjoying the process?
Well, always remember, I mean, we live in a world right now where the chances of meeting someone who has a family and kids is very, very high, because so many people get divorced. I think my advice is really not very different to the advice that I would give people who don't have children. It's just what I would say is your kid, like the greatest gift that you can give your kids is you really is being happy. You can't always be happy, but being content, being fulfilled, being resilient, working on yourself. And, navigating the world can be really, really scary, but you have to remember you learned very important lessons. Divorce is not something to be ashamed of. And so you just want to be very mindful of what kind of relationship you want to get into, and to really make that sort of intention of what you want to do differently than you did in your marriage, and the kind of person you want to be with that's different from your ex-spouse.
Yes, and it's, I have learned to really actually embrace it as an opportunity to, do things differently in the best
Yes.
possible way. So
Yeah, and you want to show your kids that that when a relationship ends, it doesn't end you.
yes, exactly. I think that's a really important point, is that, it doesn't, our kids don't, we don't have to give our kids this whole, Disney picture of you get married
Right.
to someone and that's it, happily ever after. And
Right.
if it doesn't work out like that, it's failure. As you
Right.
said, I think failure, there's so many learnings, and it's, so
It's
yes.
true.
Well, Jillian, thank you so much. It's just such a privilege to speak with you. I really,
Thank you.
really appreciate your time and your generosity and your wisdom. And I know that our listeners will get so much value out of listening to this episode.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you. And good
Thank
luck
you.
with your book. I have no
Thank you.
doubt it is going to take the world by storm and help so many people.
Oh, I appreciate you, Zoe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.